Welcome to Blue Collar Mystics, the under-the-hood approach to the depths of human consciousness. So many mysteries, so little time, so many big words. That's why we aim to take the mystical and make it practical, usable in your everyday life. And you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your story. What happened when you started asking yourself the real questions? Like, who am I? What is this? Is it a hologram? Is this some kind of weird cosmic joke? Hey, these are the questions that we are trying to get to the bottom of as we explore the final rabbit hole together here as Blue Collar Mystics. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream and the Blue Collar Mystics show. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Rockfin. Thanks for hanging in with us. Really excited about this show. I have an amazing guest, author, coach, speaker, and someone who has been doing a lot of exploratory, I would say, expeditions into art therapy and creativity and those types of things. So if you have some questions, put them in the chat. We'll bring them up. I've got quite a few myself, but welcome everyone. Author of Art For Your Sanity, Susan Hensley. Hi, Susan.
Hi there, Owen. Thank you for having me. I am equally excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. We immediately hit it off already on the pre-interview. You're in Austin.
Yeah.
I just got back from there. I don't know that my energy levels have been that high in quite some time. And we were just talking about the energy of the place. I mean, I'm on a detox right now, so I could punch a hole through a wall pretty easy. But while I was there, I felt so good that it was almost hard to focus. Like, I don't know if it doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem like that's what it should be. But I was like, I have so much energy, like I don't know what to do with myself. And yeah, there's something magical happening there in Austin. A lot of the people that I meet here through the internet are, IRL people in Austin. Like I went to like a Rosicrucian study group. I'm like, what?
Wow.
In the place where I live, there's not a Rosicrucian study group. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not something that gets to happen. Tell me a little bit. How long have you been in Austin?
Been here about 4 years. We actually followed a child here, was going to school, and we got here during the height of the pandemic in 2020. And immediately, as much as you couldn't see people, felt the energy and felt a much greater sense, if you will, of, and they're sort of dual, but ease and creativity, right? And so when you talk about that high energy you were having, I feel like it's a very uniquely creative place where ideas come to you if you're open. It's all about being open, but the more open you are, the more tangents your mind or your energy will absorb. I never lived close to a meditation place. I'm lifetime meditator, big meditator. And like we got here and there's like a Buddhist meditation center a block away. And it was like, awesome, super approachable. I mean, lots of neat paths. Like if you think you may need something, you can sort of find whatever that like modality you want to explore is. So I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I had a blast out there twofold. I mean, it was great meeting lots of conscious entrepreneurs and artists and people like that. And then also the comedy scene.
Yeah.
Pretty fun out there. There's just it. Yeah, I really enjoyed the culture. It was a lot of fun. So it's so cool that you're from there. I think that's really neat. And I think that's probably bodes well for what you're working on creatively as well, to put you in that kind of energy and in that sort of a place. It's a good place to kind of come from. Tell me a little bit about art and your background with it. I'd love to know a little bit about that.
Yeah. So like all great things in life, I have no background in it until 6-7 years ago. And even now, I don't identify as an artist. What I do, and what the book's about and where this has gone is I had a pretty big career as a corporate executive and lots of tools in coaching, life coaching, but really job coaching, executive readiness, career development. And I stumbled into art. And one of the things that I've tried to be really aware of as an adult within my both meditation practice and some of the other practices is when you get those little sparks of joy, like you do something that you haven't done before, and that I talk about as a vibration almost. It's like almost like tuning fork sense. I inadvertently stumbled into playing with art, not making art. This is process, not end product, right? At the beginning, we were talking about the really talented friends you have who did your logo, right? I was mentioning how much I love it. That's making, right, art with meaning, with intentionality. It's about final product. A lot of what we're going to talk about is process, using art and play to help you process emotions, to unwind, and to really tap into ultimately your inner wisdom or your soul through some play in a safe space. So I feel like I always need to separate what people think of as art. 'Cause people are like, well, I don't have any artistic talents. Like, well, no, it's not about that. I don't either. It's the process of creating and the process of curiosity and what that opens up.
Oh, I love that. So your background's in like executive coaching, which is like, you got some skills in there. And so you've leveraged those skills and that experience into a fun, playful type of container, which I think is really brilliant. And, as someone who is a creative myself, I find that the way that we do get to those end results that are amazing is generally through play and opening up the process itself. As obviously once you're like Becky Denny, she's the one who did this graphic, she made it. You get to the point where you got the skills that you can make whatever you want. That's mastery. But through the process of play and working through the creative process itself, I think that's how she's developed and honed those skills over time to where I can be like, hey, can you make this weird thing that I think would be super cool, like a Hindu Gothic thing? And she's like, coming right up, homie. Like, let me zip that over to you. No, I love that. I think that's really, really amazing. And so what was it about art that really grabbed your attention? Was there an experience, or what was the catalyst there?
Yeah. So to set the stage is probably until recently. I'd like to think I've had a good sense of humor, but I've been pretty much on that cultural type A achievement. First career as a journalist, then several decades in corporate America, going up the ladder and achieving, and a lot of structure within it. Deep spiritual practices, like I said, lifelong meditator, journaler, but I kept those separate to some degree. So what happened with the art is 6-7 years ago now, I was at my job and a coworker had really started a side job as a legitimate artist. She was getting commissioned. She had a background and was putting it out there. Some of us were just chatting, saying what people who don't identify as creative say. It's like, oh my God, I'm terrible. I can't draw a line or a circle or whatever. And so she offered to do a little like Saturday, 2 hours, if you will, intro, color wheel, how to draw like a face or circle kind of thing. Very simple, just friends. So I go to her house, about 5 other people, sort of rainy Saturday, and she's doing some color wheel, and I'm sort of there in the corner and playing with paints. And I end up making, because I was impatient, which fit the type A personality, I make a brown mess because, of course, the paints are moving together. And that's when people who don't understand colors or art create. You create a beautiful brown mess. But I loved.
You stayed at home and sat in the bathroom and made
exactly. I don't always love that one as much, but And what I did, because in my coaching practice, I spend a lot of time talking about glimmers and like little sparks of joy, and how much we need to pay attention, because we can go on automatic pilot through our lives so easily and not really be aware of what we're feeling and what we are enjoying versus sort of enduring, or what we're doing. And so I ask people routinely to keep notepad with them and write down those little sparks of joy, right? It's not a new concept. It's not earth-breaking at all. It's just, it helps us in self-discovery. And that was one of those moments for me that it was so intense. I actually drove home. I put it on the passenger seat of my car, this soggy piece of paper. I got into the house. I put it on the refrigerator. You know, my husband and son are like, okay, because, you know, it looked like a Rorschach test, right? But what I recognize, and it goes with some of those components, is it sparks some joy, and the act of creating made me feel good, right? It isn't that I made anything other than this mess, but it was sort of that honing in on a little bit of, I use self-compassion is that word, like sort of being your own champion. So that's the genesis, is I started to follow that, and then used some of the other practices, and eventually ended up, you know, writing a book to try and help people, because I have found it to be such a low barrier, easy to do tool for people who are just trying to process ideally life during like some of the rougher life transitions. It's a really nice, it can be really nice add with other things you may be doing.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And so that was the beginning. And what happened from there? How did you start to be like, you know what? I'm going to take my skills as an executive business coach, and we're going to finger paint.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's the great irony is, so I'm doing this just for myself. I find I enjoy it. I figure out a few things, like use the least expensive materials possible. Because the minute you get something fancy, particularly if you don't think you're that inner critic shows up. So I'm using crayons and the Elmer's glue stick, and I'm got collage, and I'm just playing. And sure enough, you know, pandemic hits, and my job just becomes unbearable and miserable because of not so much the people, the circumstances. What I was doing really turned into, you know, 7 days a week, 24/7, a lot of concerns and intensity, and did not pull off for quite a while. And what happened is, as I was art journaling, I would reflect on it. And first I appreciated it as just place to reduce stress and play. Then it became a really safe container for all of the conflicting emotions that can emerge. And it was an effective container for them to process it in a different way. If you keep a written journal, many times you're still linearly processing. This helps you get into the other side of your brain and feel a little more holistic. But then where the real magic happened was in reflecting on the symbols, and I was collaging. I ended up with all these pictures of people standing at the edge of cliffs, or jumping off cliffs, or winding roads, right? And you're just reflecting on yourself. You understand your own symbolism. And it started to become clear that I needed to take a major chance and do something different. And before, I was telling myself a story that I can't stop this unless I have a complete plan and know what I'm going to do, because, you know, I would go crazy jumping into the abyss, if you will. And the art journal, my inner self, my soul coming through, and imagery really is what encouraged me to resign. I didn't know at that point I would write the book. That was still at least a year off, if not more. I didn't know I would take my coaching practice where I have, but I knew I needed a change. And without that leap of faith, I wouldn't be open to what would be there. So that's really where that different type of faith and trust, right? We talk a lot in the spiritual world about manifesting. We've got a picture. This was about opening in a very different way and faith. So that is where I think I really became hooked, and it has continued over the years to guide me in a very different way that is humorous. Quite honestly, I have to laugh at myself when I look back at some of the images that have come up.
I love that, though. I think that's the best. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves.
Oh yeah,
so important.
So important. I'll tell you just a funny story about the symbols. And sometimes I don't even know. People say, well, there aren't magazines anymore. You get catalogs. Somehow I will end up with something that I'll tear up in collage. And I wrote this book, and I was a bit in denial because I've got this big journalism background and lots of feelings about writing a really personal book and publishing this. So I wrote it. It was getting ready to be published this summer, and I really hadn't told anyone, right? It was a few people knew. And I start looking back through my art journal, and there's all these pictures of doors, shut doors. And I'm just like collaging the heck. I don't know where I'm getting all these pictures of doors. It must have been like a paint ad and some catalog I got. I don't know. Door after door after door. It's like, doesn't take a genius to realize I am not walking through this door. I'm not, in essence, walking the talk. And then finally, I realized there's a picture of a door ajar with a yellow lab. We had a yellow lab at the time. He since has passed, but that's sort of our family dog. That's the pet we've always had sitting there. And it was just so interesting, that inner encouragement through, accident or symbol, or just trusting that I would see those signs to get me to really fully walk through that door.
Wow. Yeah.
It makes me laugh. It's so silly and humorous and gentle and kind and profound. And that's just through tearing stuff up and collaging away. Because any given day, I'm not thinking this door necessarily means something. I'm thinking, oh, it's blue. I like blue. You're just playing
right
in your mind.
Well, yeah. And I mean, you walked away from your career without any backup career. Right. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Yes, you are. I ended up getting hired back to do a little bit of part-time work. But when I left, there were 6 months. I walked the Camino Santiago in northern Spain. I mean, I did the full search for myself. By the way, if you go thinking you're going to get an answer in a career, you don't. You get blisters, you meet amazing people, but that forcing, right? I've had to learn personally on my journey a lot of lessons around, being very culturally that type A, about no, force doesn't work. Openness, creation of service works really well. That's great.
Well, so obviously, part of the art journaling is that opening up, but as far as entering into that mentality, any tips for that? If I'm going to sit down, maybe do some art journaling today, how can I prepare myself and get my mind in the proper place to open up and see what comes out?
Yeah. So what I love to do, because you've got never know when, both in my online training and in-person workshops, that the very first exercise is a fun one, and I will have just crayons out. And once again, I mentioned it a moment ago, key thing here is to use really inexpensive art supplies, because you have no expectation of yourself. They take you to that childhood state of play. So crayons everywhere. I say take 2 crayons, just choose 2. Doesn't matter which 2. Going to take 3 minutes, only 3 minutes. Put on a song you love, or do it silently, right? It's up to you. In a workshop, we'll listen to a song. 3 minutes, we're just going to fill a sheet of paper. And it can be like journal size, 5 by 7. You can do it on the back of a envelope junk mail, right? It's a really low barrier thing, but 3 minutes, and your only purpose, the process, is to fill it with color. You can draw things, you can shade, you can circle, do spirals. It's whatever you want. But the goal, if you will, is to fill the sheet with some imagery.
Okay.
And then the sort of exercise, or what I suggest, and all depends on where you come from. If you view yourself as a creative, you don't have this barrier. I work with a lot of people who don't view themselves as that. And
Right.
so getting to play is so hard. And sure enough, the debrief on it, when you say, how do you feel? It's like free, giddy. I've had people raise their hand and say, it has been literally 20 or 30 years since I've done something with no rules, right? The exercise has constraints, so people aren't overwhelmed with choice, right? And they don't freeze, because that can prevent that. But the goal is to get into play and remember what play feels like. We didn't, as children, play with a purpose. You just went to play. You weren't trying to get better at play that day. You weren't, trying to do that. And I think for adults, it's very hard to take yourself too seriously holding a crayon. Right. I mean, I have yet to meet an adult that holding a crayon fires up their inner critic. Right. And that's actually what I love about crayons and big, thick glue sticks. Because once again, unless you're something in the creative arts, you just don't fire up the I have to be good at this, or I'm discovering a talent. Because it starts with play, then to curiosity. How did I feel? What did it bring up? Then to a little bit of what I call self-compassion, or like being your own, proud parent. That was what I instinctively did by hanging this mess on the refrigerator.
Right.
But it sort of said, yes, the act of creating felt good, and I'm proud I took a few minutes to create.
I think that's awesome. I love it. And okay, so I want to do my best here to kind of keep things partitioned, because I can't help it. I fall into this trap myself. I'm like, I need to take a day off so I can work better, so that I can have more results. And so I know where we're coming at with this is there's no outcome, there's no expectation other than we're just filling the page up. But let's talk about, or if you could touch upon some of the insights, maybe breakthroughs that have come through you or some of your clients through doing this process. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. So some of the insights that I've seen people have, and it tends to be in layers. I have found, we could all use some play and stress relief, and that's great. And it's a fun tool for that. Where it's been most impactful, as I said, are people going through life transitions. And we go through transitions in our lives shockingly frequently, meaning every 12 to 18 months or something. You may be moving, it may be career, it may be relationship based, it could be health based, right? There's a lot of different kinds of transitions, and transitions kick up a ton of ambiguity, right? You may be coasting along and you sort of feel like you've got life, and then all of a sudden you're going through one of these transitions. And when people are using art journaling, some of the what I would call the insights folks have gotten, it depends on where they are at the very beginning of a transition, particularly one that they may not have wanted, right? That happens to us. It can be a loss of a job, change of a relationship, a need to move. There needs to be a grieving and a processing, and the safe container that an art journal provides. I had someone say, it gives image, even if you're just drawing a little screaming face with lightning bolts coming out of it, it gives voice in a safe space to something that you could talk around in a circle for a very long time and not necessarily feel better, right? You're sort of putting it out there that's how you feel, and then it's safe and in the book. So some people have really liked it for sort of that ending. That's what starts any transition, right? You start with an end that needs to be recognized. Then there's that big old messy middle. And the next real place of insights is it is okay to be going round and round in a circle. So a lot of what the art journal does, I had a person say, it becomes sort of their own cheerleader, or reminds them they're resilient, right? When you're trying to forge ahead, whether it's a new career, your relationship, get your health back on track. It's sort of many cases, one step forward, half back, two sideways. And when you look back over a few days or a few weeks, you can actually see some of the progress, and you end up recognizing as humans, because I think it's truly in the human heart, how resilient we are and how much grit we have, even if we may be beating ourselves up. And so that sense, I've had people say that it gave them an appreciation that they could make it through a bad day, because they could turn the page and see that in another day it was better. They were drawing, suns, a day that they were drawing, lightning bolts and gray rain and writing grief. 2 days later, they're drawing, sunshine and a tree growing, whatever their symbolism is. That happened to be her particular symbolism, but it's only a day or two apart, which can really help people recognize that our feelings can at the moment make us believe they're forever. And with perspective, they're like weather. And that's been one of the powerful things people have told me about the art journal.
Oh, wow. That's really cool. Okay. Well, tell me a little bit about how this became a book. Like, I'm interested to hear a little bit about like how this whole, your experiences and leading up to creating, and publishing a book. That's exciting.
Yeah, it was exciting. It's my sort of, if you will, prayer or ask of the universe at this stage was, how do I be of service? I felt like, I'd spent a lot of years trying to do things, although in service of family or companies. But like, you take me was a little bit where I was asking. And once again, we have images in our mind of what that may be. And it wasn't any of those, but I kept asking, and I stayed really open as I art journaled, and then through some conversations. And I'd also, I think we have to be very careful and sometimes explore things we've said we would never do. I always said I would never write a book. I had that first career in journalism, and I was, and it scarred me, quite honestly. There were a lot of cultural constructs, and it's like, no, I would never put myself out there personally, certainly in that way. And it became one of those things that if what I was asking to do was to try and serve and share, what was coming back at me from my own pages in the art journal was, this is the thing that I am sharing when I'm talking to people. I meet people, and, if you've got some connection and you're listening to them, I start to talk about it and suggest or hope, right? And as I'm watching their faces, I'm realizing this is something that I think could help some people. It's not for everyone, right? Nothing's for everyone. We're all, individuals, but because it's low barrier, it's easy. It starts with play. And in this world at this time, I think a little more fun and play and a safe place to process emotions that isn't blah out into the world. I don't think we need to dump our emotions out into the internet necessarily.
Sure.
Where it allows you to process. I realized I needed to do it. And that was, at this stage, the service that I could put forth. And so it just started to take a life of its own. But I mean, it wasn't easy. I told you the story about all the doors, and I'd actually written entire book and had the things, and was still sort of refusing to tell anyone or consider doing any publicity. I was going to like buy copies and give it to my friends. And I really had to, talk to myself and kind friends and think about it. It's like, walk through that door, share. You did this to serve, but we can get very afraid of how things will be received. And, that doesn't end, but lots of encouragement, as I said, to walk through the door, then lots of plant imagery about growth. And yeah, it's sort of fun. It's a lot of fun, actually. It's not sort of fun. It's
No.
Yeah. Makes you laugh at yourself. We're all sort of, there's a quote in the book I use. I think it's an Emilio Estevez quote, actually, about we're all like beautiful, ridiculous wrecks. And I think there's something in that shared humanity of recognizing that, although I've written this very personal book and there's all these exercises and brain science in it, you know, I'm just another person trying to figure it out. This is not like a a guru book. I'm sharing.
No, I love that. I love that approach. Yeah, because like no one's taking some position of authority here. We're all peers, and we're all human, so we're all trying to discover this. But it seems like this might be. I mean, it's probably useful for a lot of things, but it seems like it might be very useful for going through the 5 stages of grief. Is that one of the bigger sort of inspirations for putting this together to help people kind of work through that stuff? Or
for sure, you know, in the online training and some of the wellness resorts I've talked about, you meet people, and I was talking about life transition. So there's all sorts of grief that does come. When we think of it most likely with the passing of a loved one, but there's so many things we grieve for. But yeah, those stages, which are a transition, it's ripe for it. And that's where I find it most powerful. And because that's also where the emotions, there's such duality in the emotions, or what appears to be paradox, right? There can be tremendous grief and loss and also relief. And that doesn't feel good to say, but when you're using colors or images or whatever, right? I think it helps us give imagery, or through color and whatever symbols speak to you, to what we can have a hard time articulating.
Yeah. Instead, you're just feeling the emotion and putting something on a piece of paper. You're not dumping it out and like you said, on the internet or whatever, but you're just feeling the feeling.
Yeah, I had a lesson early on, and I've shared this with people, and it's really come back with my clients that they have it. There was a period where I was filling pages and with what I felt was rage. And I'm thinking, wow, I didn't realize I had so much anger. And I was using watercolors. I was slashing away. Some of those colors for me are like gray or black or red, and screaming faces. And it felt really intense. And there were multiple entries. And what was nice about it is I was processing it there versus taking it out or misplacing those feelings on loved ones. But as the watercolors dried, or you look back on a crayon drying, once again, you can start to have real empathy and sympathy. And I realized so much of what was appearing in me as rage was actually very fear-based. And it would have taken me, and I'm a fan of therapy for sure. Like I said, meditator. I'm believe in all the things, right? We can't get enough help here. So it's what works. But I never understood it in that way till I looked back. And it's been interesting in working with clients how thinking either that they were very afraid or very anxious was something else, or right there, we can define ourselves some way by an emotion that's difficult. And there's really so many other layers of emotion when we reflect happening within that one label that somehow we've given ourselves.
No, that's really good. Yeah. You talked a little bit about the critic. Now, I've had the good fortune to be able to do some parts work and things like that. If people are familiar with internal family systems, some of my audience certainly will be. But can we talk a little bit about that? Because that critic, especially for us as we get older and we're not kids anymore, seems to be a pretty loud, in my experience, has been a louder and louder voice.
Yeah.
And it's been pretty damn impossible to create something with that voice at the same time. Like I find that it's good to have the critiques and stuff at a certain point, right? Like when we're refining it, like if we're going to create this thing, and it's like, okay, great, there's a draft, let's find out. But as far as dealing with that inner critic, any advice that you might have as far as dealing with that, confronting that, accepting that, etc.? I would love to hear your thoughts and perspective on that.
Yeah. So with my clients, we spend a lot of time on that and the online training, because that critic at the wrong time kills joy, kills creativity, and keeps us small and scared. Right. And if we force ourselves to try and create through that, it's with a lot of constriction. And I don't think it's what it could be, right? It gets us really out of alignment. So I like to start everything is it relates to this back, if you think of kids and play. And one of the opening suggestions I make in that 3-minute exercise I was describing, like with the crayons and you're scribbling and listening to music, kids, particularly young kids, have no trouble telling other kids they don't like them and want to play with them. Now, make the other kids cry and immediately someone sweeps in and tells them that's not okay, but that's culture. They don't actually want to play with that other kid. You're laughing because you know that's true, right?
Yeah.
So
in business, I'm like, I don't want to work with you.
Yeah. So actually, what I have people do is set it up as a play date in your mind and allow whatever your 5-year-old, your 6-year-old self to say to your inner critic, this is not for you. It sounds so silly. And yet, if you tap into that, you remember that authenticity and that honesty, and it helps you go forward. Then the next sort of exercise through the course is to start to observe when that critic comes in. And you can let it be there, but not give it any power, right? You can, because it's not about just forcing if you can't do it. It's like, okay, you're here, but I'm having fun. And I can have some fun. And so there's a series of ways that we start to work with it, but it really can start with a certain intention to know that it's there and to say, I need you to not be here right now, because then you're creating that space and you don't just have that screaming voice telling you you're creating junk or that you are junk. I mean, whatever the horrible things we say to ourselves.
Awful things. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I love that. I've definitely dealt with that, and have my buddy and I have been doing this type of work, and we'll be out in the field and being social with people. And one night we were at a Mexican restaurant, and he was like, "All right, so this side of charro beans is your inner critic, and I want you to talk to the charro beans." And honestly, it was a really powerful exercise, and it definitely helped me to kind of compartmentalize that part of myself and see it as for what it is. I think these parts of us, even and especially that inner critic, really wants the best for us. Yeah. So instead of like, I love your approach where you're like, it's not about shutting it out, but like, hey, listen, I need to just focus on my doodle now, I need to focus on this crayon and the paper at the moment, and then we'll come back to you, or whatever that looks like. I guess there's probably a lot of different approaches that people can do, but I think that's really, really good advice as far as dealing with that inner critic.
Yeah. Gosh, Owen, I love the charro bean example. And also, I think you brought up something I didn't say that's really important, so I want to give it a bit of space. The inner critic's trying to protect us. It's coming from a place of fear. It doesn't want us to be embarrassed or fail. It doesn't want us to feel bad. So it's like gone awry in its for most people, it's gone awry. It's taken its job a little too seriously. We've given it too much power in our desire to stay safe. But yes, the charro bean example is what I love, because it's playful. It creates that ridiculousness, which allows that space to see whatever your inner critic was saying is equally ridiculous or unhelpful. That is a terrific. I will have to share that at some point. I will attribute it to you and your friend. But
I can't take any credit for it. It's my friend Todd, and we've done a couple of podcasts here. But he's done a lot of the parts work. He's done a lot of Byron Katie stuff, a lot of David Hawkins stuff, and so he has just a different set of tools to what I have. So we work a lot in tandem and coach each other and stuff. But yeah, it was absolutely absurd and ridiculous, and I'm howling laughing in the middle of the Mexican restaurant as I'm addressing my inner critic as a cup of charro beans. But that I'll never forget it. And I don't think some of the people in the restaurant will forget it either, because they were like, what is so funny over there? But externalizing that part and speaking directly to it seemed to really help in that particular situation. And I can only imagine, especially, if you're the type of clients that you work with, they're trying to process stuff. There's probably a lot of rigidity and not a whole lot of openness to some of these ideas at first.
Right. Because they seem scary.
Yeah, it is scary. And we don't want to confront ourselves or admit that we missed something or that we didn't grieve. That's embarrassing, right? Like, oh, I didn't heal from this. That's embarrassing. Every little thing we could look at and analyze, and that critic can just have a field day if we don't know how to disarm it. So I think that's a really important what you just said about it, about it trying to protect us and trying to keep us safe. Like that way we come, when we do speak with it, we're not speaking with anger,
right,
stunning it or telling it that it's bad or any of that. It's like, hey, look, I know you're trying to protect me, but look, I gotta scribble on this page with carnation pink right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's I'll be safe. You brought up Byron Katie in the work, which I love and is a tool I've used. I almost can think of the art journal and certain entries as not visualization of the exact without getting to questions and methodology, but that dialogue, but with that deep reassurance. It's like, what's true? What's not? What feels right? What is the color I'm wanting to use? It's an interesting, many, many paths to like the big truth or the questions. If you give your intro for the podcast, it's like, who am I? The questions. There's avenues that if you're open and you're asking for that openness or guidance, that I think can help us get there. And I've entered a stage of my life, and maybe the world is also taking me there, where joy and fun feels more of what's needed versus a grind and a beat up. It feels like we're very out of balance. And so building that in is, I have found really powerful antidote to some of what's happening.
I love that. Yeah, I'm all for it. My friend has a creativity games doc on her Gumroad, and there's some silly stuff in there. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, like accessing that more playful state. Obviously, we're talking about art journaling. That's a huge thing. But if there's anything else people could potentially give a try or a little exercise here or there that come to mind, I'd love to hear what you might have to say about that.
I was recently speaking at a university with a bunch of, I don't know that they originally identified themselves as stressed out college students, but, a lot of pressure.
Sure. And that was tough.
And I was between, what are you going to do with your life and loans and grades and, all that stuff, and had them do an exercise. I introduced that concept and they sort of gasped. It was funny about choose something. Whatever it is, singing, dancing, building something, I don't care what it is, you may be intrigued, to do badly.
Okay.
And I said to do badly. And once again, for 10 minutes, I think there's real power in a short period of time. They're like, what? It's like, yeah, you love singing, you may sing a cover, but you're just going to sing for 10 minutes with no one around your favorite tunes or whatever, dance, bang on a drum, right? Find two pins and bang away, but do it with the intention of doing it badly. You are not going to try and hit the notes if you choose singing. And this applies to art. And it was so horrifying, culturally horrifying, because people are sort of taken back when I say do something badly, not talking about harming others. I'm not talking about like being evil or bad. It's, I'm going to give myself permission to, in a world where we're always to be improving, clean up your diet, exercise more. I resemble all those comments. I want to be clear, right? Promote your book. There's always this little bit more we should all be doing on the achievement and getting that much incrementally better. So for the play, to your question, like, how do you help people access? I think it's a really provocative question. It's like, what would be sort of fun? Would I want to dig a hole? Would I want to, now that winter is here, if you get some rain, splash in a puddle, make mud, put my shoes down in the sticky mud and make a mess and let it dry. You know, whatever it is that you wouldn't allow yourself to do that feels sort of bad, right?
Yeah.
I call it like bad in moderation, so that we're not like going against the fabric of society, just like 10 minutes. And it was interesting to watch them play with that. And the freedom, as they talk about what they may do badly, right, was sort of fun, right? It became a creative exercise that just taps into that play again. Because once again, when we played whatever it was, you know, ride your bikes, go on a merry-go-round, I don't know what it was. You just didn't do it with the thought, I'm going to go around this merry-go-round better, right? I'm going to necessarily ride this. I mean, once you're not falling off your bike, yeah, you need to have some competency. But, you know, before we turned everything into a way to get better and improve.
I love that. Yeah. I think that's so much fun to think about doing something poorly, right? Like, so as a comedian, sometimes we bomb. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes I've gone on stage with the intention to bomb on purpose. And I have done that. And people, you know, people do that. Comedians do that sometimes. It gives you an emotional ability to not care at all what the audience thinks, right? So it allows you to sort of build this muscle of indifference toward the audience, which is good and bad, right? Like, you obviously, you want to have a successful set, you want the audience to laugh, but also as a creative and as a creator, you want to bring your message to people, right? Like, if you've read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, he's really focused on the fact that, like, it needs to be your message, not the more you try to please the audience, the more you're basically, you know, muting yourself.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you could maybe even use that vernacular if you'd like, for like the bomb this particular thing. And then it also makes me think of ecstatic dance. You know, I used to kind of do that you know, not necessarily intentionally, but just kind of dancing off to a point, you know, just like to just goof around. And those are, I don't know, those those two things had come to mind.
Well, I love, and what courage, right? It's interesting that bombing intentionally, because it builds the muscle that nothing happens, may not be comfortable, but like your heart keeps beating, you walk off, you sleep, right? So the muscle that builds, right? And then this really came up in writing the book, as people said, you know, who is it for? How are you going to market it? And this or that? It's like, I'm writing this to be really true, right? If I'd always said I would never write a book, because I didn't think I could be true to me and to what I wanted to say. I think there is something important, you know, in the world of like market research and right, Skin, you're not forgetting your audience ever, but I think being so clear about making sure that in thinking of it, you are staying really true to what you're offering. Yeah. And you can be okay with the audience at that moment not being in the place for it, is how I sort of view it.
Yeah, I really like that. That's amazing. I love that you have come from this corporate world and you've come into literally just, you know, coloring with crayons to help people process themselves, their emotions. It's amazing. It kind of floors me, you know, and I love this industry for so many reasons. But yeah, I'm kind of just amazed that you know, have gone into this, and I think it's beautiful. I really do. Tell everybody where they can find more information about you. I've got your website in the show notes, and let people know what they can find if they go and check that out.
Sure. So website's the best place. There, it's free, downloadable PDF. Just gets you started if you're curious about art journaling. There's the book, video with like 4 exercises. There's the online training, which is much longer, and it really gets into the grief, and it's got a whole workbook where it goes pretty deep. So there's those things. You can contact me, you know, if you want coaching. So it's all there. But I do think if you give it a try, and I think you've got an audience of people who probably are more comfortable in the creative. I keep coming back to start with play, then curiosity, how'd it feel? And then give it a little self-compassion, a little bit of like proud parent, if you will.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. The proud parent, that's a part of myself that I think I need to puff up a little bit. Probably all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also if you wouldn't mind sharing, since you're in Austin, you know, I definitely have some friends out in that way. If people are looking to like work with you directly, physically, are you running any workshops? So you have anything going on out there in Austin?
Not scheduled right now in Austin, but always happy to put something together. You know, I'm sort of waiting for the start of the year. It's ironic. So many of my workshops have been in other places. I realized that you're saying that I've done them in California, a couple in Arizona. Yeah, that's just sort of has happened that way. You brought it up. It's like, oh gosh, yeah.
Well, I can put you in touch with Courtney.
That'd be
You
great.
know, I can at least, you know, do an introduction. I think she'd like what you're doing. And like I said, she's a G. So, so we could maybe do something like that. And then the next time I'm in Austin, I'm going to holler at you.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go get some tacos somewhere. There's 1 million great places.
That's so true. Yeah. The food. I mean, we could just go to a truck.
Well, my favorite, well, we won't get too inside this. I'll wait for when we're not recording to sit here and pull out my favorite food truck that's like 4 blocks from my house.
No, let us know. We want to know where the food truck is. This is important. It's going in the show notes.
Yeah, it's Veracruz, all natural. It is delicious tacos, Veracruz.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, the food out there was great. There was a lot of, and I was really impressed with the whole culture there. So I'm glad to hear that you're out in Austin, and I'll definitely be making another appearance out there here pretty soon and in the next month or two. And
excellent. Yeah, I'd love to get together.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's just amazing. I love it when people who are in the professional world come into the self-development world and bring these amazing revelations and observations, you know, because like in the professional world, and I've had one foot in both sides myself. So it's like, there's so much stress. There's so much cortisol. There's, you know, there's things that you got to process. They say it's just business. It's not personal. Yeah. Well, emotionally, it's personal.
We're still humans. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like acting like we stopped being a human.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. While you clock in on the clock. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. Like I can't help but take things personally when I'm dealing with people. They're
Right.
persons. So, you know, I love that you're focusing on this, and I love that you have these tools too. I want to encourage everybody who's watching or listening to the playback to go and download the PDF. I have Susan's link in the description. So check that out. Go ahead and download that and play around a little bit. Shoot me a message. Let me know what comes up, and shoot Susan a message if you're looking for some coaching or insight as well. So thank you guys, everybody, for watching the show tonight. Rockfin, what's up? I see some of y'all over there hanging out, and then YouTube here, and we're on Facebook as well somewhere. I don't know. Facebook's a little bit more difficult to navigate for whatever reason, but I just clicked the stream to Facebook button and it's showing up somewhere. I don't know. But
mystery.
That's right. We're out there in the Ethernet or the ether or the internet, whatever it is. We're out there somewhere in the cyberspace. But yeah, thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, and I'm excited. Yeah, I'm gonna do a little coloring myself this afternoon. I'm waiting on a house guest who will be here in an hour or two, so it'll give me a little bit of time, and I'm trying to open up my creative potential a little bit more, and also, you know, deal with this inner critic a little bit. So thank you so much for all the insights and the tools, and yeah, we appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. It's been terrific. I appreciate you and looking forward to seeing you in Austin.
Awesome. I look forward to it. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see y'all next time on Blue Collar Mystics. Peace. Love's all there is.